Hi, this is Marcelino Huertas from Baskonia, and you're listening to Sweet 16. Tune in.
Zvezda come big against Barca. Real grinded out of Rochestie, and there's a double round week ahead. It's all ahead of us here, right now, on Sweet 16. Tune in.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of Sweet 16, an open look on EuroLeague basketball. As always, we're here, Emmet and Norris. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hi Moshe, greetings from the Dublin office, where it's we survived two storms in the last week. Admittedly, in both cases, they were quite tame on the Dublin side. The west coast of Ireland would disagree with me on how tame they are, but the upside is we had no interruptions. We were able to watch basketball, so it was all good.
And hello from Athens. The game of Olympiacos just finished. I have just returned home, and even at the gym, the conversation was about Maccabi, so we are right in the point as 2 games week is coming in for the EuroLeague.
And we're just going to have a quick go through some of the games that I suppose were lower profile last week, and then we'll get into the fun one. So, it was a close win for Maccabi over Baskonia, but they got the job done. PAO, again, a little bit workmanlike, but got the job done over Bros of Bamberg, sorry. And Fenerbahce winning a very high scoring game over Milano, continuing that Milano are going to be worth watching, if not necessarily worth believing in type team for the season. Guys, any thoughts at all on those 3 games?
Yeah, I'll start off with Maccabi. I think that this week they were up against, last week, they were up against a tougher rival than the one they've had in the first week of EuroLeague action. And, you know, they looked better, like in terms, maybe the offense was not as fluid as it was in the fourth quarter versus Bamberg, but they've shown us that they can overcome a lot of things, especially when, Coach Prigioni did some amazing defensive adjustments to prevent from Pierre Jackson having a second great game. All in all, it was a great game to watch, and I can't help wondering about this week's doubleheader. About Panathinaikos, not a big surprise over there, to be honest. And Fener, I never guessed it would have go to overtime, but they got the job done eventually. And I do worry for Milan, as they will meet both Barcelona and Madrid in the next couple of games, if I'm not mistaken. All right, Sally, did you see these games?
Well, to be honest, nothing can surprise us at this point in the EuroLeague, and I think even the fact that Zvezda got the win, it can't be explained by the Sweet 16 jinx, first of all. But it seems that maybe we are expecting too much too early from Barcelona. I still believe that Barcelona at this point is a team that will make it to the playoffs and should be considered a playoff contender no matter what happens at Belgrade. On the other hand, I see a Maccabi Tel Aviv team that finally have had managed to change the whole air of the team. It's not so much about the talent at this point. It's a little bit refreshing to see a version of Maccabi that doesn't have the burden of the leftovers of the team that won the EuroLeague Championship back in 2014. So I believe that this whole change of the roster maybe can explain the way that Maccabi plays so far in the season, because they have a lot of work to do. But I really can't say that you can have any result consider in this version of the EuroLeague with the 60 teams as an upset. I don't see any team that can say yes, I'm absolutely safe against my opponent, no matter who is this opponent. Everyone has to work and grind on the court, and that's the beauty of this format.
Before we get into that deeper look at Zvezda's win over Barca, Real and Cesky, it was a game everybody was looking forward to, and I think Aris has hidden it. We are possibly expecting a little bit too much at this stage of the season. Two sides who are very well backed to get to the Final Four, two sides who would be seen as serious contenders for the title, meeting very early in the season. A lot of high-profile aspects to this. Obviously, the continuing Doncic storyline, the return of Chacha to Madrid. There was an awful lot to make this game appealing. What we got was, let's not dance around it. It was a dud. It was a turd actually. It was not good basketball. Real got the win deservedly because they were less bad than CSKA by a clear margin, but neither of these sides look close to their best. And I think Moshe, you'd largely agree with me on that one.
Well, yeah, I totally agree on that, but I got to say a few things, because the first is, I said that in my opinion last week, CSKA are going to lose this game, and Real are not going to struggle too much throughout it. But one thing we did not expect is for Madrid to lose both Kuzmic long term and also Anthony Randolph for a few weeks due to a shoulder injury, and that somewhat hurts them in terms of depth to their front court. They're still highly talented, and they still got a lot of options, but it's gonna make them it's gonna make them think over about who to bring instead. That's one thing. Well, and as I enjoyably read on Eurohoops.net, there was perhaps I think it was by Antonis Strogilakis. Aris, correct me if I'm wrong. He had an item about CSKA's bad offensive night in ages, pretty much.
Yes, it was a historic disaster for CSKA Moscow. But if you look at the bright side, first of all, many teams will be defeated by Real Madrid at their home gym. So if let's say CSKA had to choose a bad night, then it didn't hear that this kind of night happened at Madrid. And also you have to admit that CSKA Moscow must build also a new chemistry. And they were quite unlucky, because if a team knew how to stop Sergio Rodriguez, that team was, and that coach was Real Madrid and Coach Lasso. It's a combination of a lot of factors that in the end created a result that was not expected by a perennial EuroLeague title contender. On the other hand, you can make too much things out of this result. CSKA Moscow already bounced back against their opponent at VTB League, the Autodor Saratov, and I expect them to bounce back also this week in the EuroLeague.
Emmet, I really got to ask you a question about this one, because we're seeing CSKA, and you've mentioned right at the beginning of the second season of Sweet 16 that perhaps the absence of Aaron Jackson could prove to be too critical. Do you believe that this is the issue about CSKA's backcourt, because they don't have that defensive depth, that can manage to make all their defensive weaknesses somewhat, make it maybe disappear?
It's a hard one, Moshe, because there's definitely an Aaron Jackson shaped hole there, don't get me wrong. But I think the other thing we're seeing is what Aris is pointing out there, which is the chemistry factor, because if you look at the performances or lack thereof of Andrei Vorontsevich, Vitaly Fridzon, those are guys who, they contribute a lot more, like Vorontsevich from deep in EuroLeague last year. His numbers were stupidly good, and he's basically been offensively irrelevant completely, in fact, through two games here. And they're the kind of guys who you get more out of them when you've got more, you got the chemistry down pat, and it's quite clear that isn't down pat yet. And so I think, yes, the Aaron Jackson issue is not going to go away, but I think if they can find a way so that the glue guys, essentially, the fellas who are, the smart role players who are really good in CSKA have their chemistry, I think if they can get to that, which I think they will get to as well, like it's a time thing, I think that we'll see a lot more out of them then. Like, you look at that and you kind of go, that's kind of what happened with Barcelona as well, and that like they're still finding their way, because it is a very new roster in many pieces. Like, they went to Belgrade, not an easy place to go to, obviously, and they lost 90-82. But I think the thing that jumped out for me from that was the energy of Matthias Lessort, really. Like, we got the grind we expect from Zvezda. Like, they were able to build up that lead when they lost it, they were still able to come back and find a way to win. Like, it was very typical Milko Bielica type of win. It was very much of his style. But you look at the numbers for Lessort, like 13 points and 6 of 10 shooting, like 9 boards, 0 turnovers. He was just 3 turnovers. My apologies, I can't read. But he was just really, really disciplined. Aside from that little bit of ball stuff. But we got the energy, we got the explosion, and Zvezda need that kind of explosive option out there for them, even if the minutes aren't going to be absolutely gigantic. I know from talking to guys in the Sixers, like, they love this kid. They're not thinking like, obviously, high grade NBA, but they're thinking this type of fella you can plug in as your backup center for 10 years and not worry about the backup slot there. So that's what they're looking at with him. We're seeing the energy coming out of him so far this season in EuroLeague. We've seen it as well in ABA League. Lessort really is looking at the opportunity he's got here to make a statement season. And, fair play to the kid. He's taking it. Aris, obviously you talked a bit about Barcelona there. What did you think of Zvezda as well yourself in that game?
First of all, this was the second coming of Taylor Rochestie. You can't speak about this game without mentioning Taylor Rochestie, who was back in Nizhny Novgorod mode. And as you said, Lessort is still really raw, but all the physical tools are there. He can be an asset, as you said, even in the NBA. But he still has a lot to learn, and he still has a lot to learn also about the basics in basketball. However, when you are such a gifted athlete, that's the basis. In order to create something in modern basketball, you can really teach high, you can teach explosiveness, and those kind of athletic abilities, like the ones that Lessort has, are really a gift. So you just can't throw away those kind of gifts.
And I suppose, Moshe, your own thoughts really on what we're seeing with Zvezda. Obviously, Rochestie definitely playing a lot better in red and white than he ever did in blue and yellow.
Well, I gotta say first, don't underestimate our power of jinx, especially after what happened. I'm
getting the freedom of Belgrade by the end of the season,
Well, they will accept us with open arms, as soon as we land there for the Final Four. But all kidding aside, they were, I didn't expect them to be able to play such a high-tempo game right at the beginning, right from the get-go, especially against a team that had so much depth. It was crazy seeing that game. And the thing that was so beautiful to see was like, as soon as you saw it, you were overwhelmed, because you did not expect from Zvezda that early on that season to have that DNA of, we were going to have a huge lead, and as soon as the other team are going to come back, we're going to bounce back and retake and reclaim the lead that we had. And obviously Taylor Rochestie is playing, I would say, as good as he was in Nizhny for sure, and in Maccabi at the beginning of the season at least he was very good. But obviously I think that he's the one to actually mark in our notebooks to see how well he does this season. Honestly, I was surprised. We knew that Lessort is great. I thought that in a way he reminded me a lot of Patrick Young, only a bit more. He's gonna need, like Aris said, he's raw at the moment, as you said, obviously, Emmet. So I'm really expecting to see these guys as much as this season progresses. But wow, come on, as we all discussed like before that. If I'm going to take you a few days back and I'm going to ask you again, guys, Zvezda versus Barcelona, would you still pick, would you be crazy enough, crazy, so to say, to go with Zvezda again? That was a surprise. I know that, we shouldn't have been surprised by any result whatsoever, but still the way that Zvezda won that game was impressive, to say the least.
Yeah, they definitely showed great heart, great guts. Moving on to two other games before we get to the last game of last week. Khimki over Zalgiris, 85-77. Olympiacos over Unicaja, 80-75. Khimki Zalgiris, of course, the two combatants in what is the recently defined even award for EuroLeague, the Keith Langford Award for most fouls drawn per game. We had the two leading competitors in EuroLeague so far this season going off against each other, Alexis Shved and Paulius Yankunas. Shved drawing 7, Yankunas drawing 10. And that gives Paulius a marginal lead over Shved at the top of the most fouls drawn table individually. The Keith Langford Award, I will be watching it all season because I was just fascinated how Langford averaged almost 2 fouls drawn per game, more than any other player in EuroLeague last season. The nearest to him was Nando De Colo, 6 fouls drawn per game. Langford averaged 7.96. That's just ridiculous. So who's the Keith Langford Award winner this year? That's a big thing to draw from that. Zalgiris, obviously, if you told them beforehand they'd lose by about 8 points in Moscow, I don't think well, not quite Moscow, they wouldn't have been too upset. But Saras, quite accurate saying, strategically they're beat up, didn't work out for them. Moshe, any thoughts on that game before we go on to OLYUNI-KAHA?
Well, it was what it is. What it is. Come on, we all anticipated a Žalgiris loss. True, they could be a bit more. They're not happy with themselves. And I think they will bounce back. They have already won today in the Lithuanian League, and we will discuss their games for the doubleheader. Let's go to OLYUNI-KAHA. Aris in a way, Oli opened strong. They've opened actually extremely strong. They were up by quite a margin. Eventually, only it was I think 5 points. The way that the game ended. But how did you experience it all?
For Olympiacos, the point is simple. As long as they can win without Spanoulis and without many other key members of the roster, they will be happy. At this point of the season, Olympiacos is just trying to get things done, and there's still an open discussion which may end up with the addition of a player after the injury of Kim Kili. Olympiacos still has a leader named Spanoulis who has not appeared yet in any official game, and the fact that they are 2 wins after 2 weeks, they are in 2 wins after 2 weeks in the EuroLeague without Spanoulis, it's a statement by itself. I'm not saying that Olympiacos is no longer dependent on Spanoulis. That's the wrong way to see things. The fact, however, is that Olympiacos, despite missing Spanoulis, today, for example, in the Greek League, they played without Spanoulis, Tili, Printezis and Manjaris, who were rested with minor injuries in order to be ready for Maccabi. And of course, they won with Agravanis scoring 20 points. What I'm saying here is that Olympiacos has a deep roster. We knew that, but the fact that they are winning without the need of having Spanoulis on the court to take all the crucial decisions is a step forward for the team. And at this point, the result is what really counts for them.
And of course, lastly, we got to a pretty important game for the two teams last week that were in it, Valencia and EFES. Valencia with the home win. Moshe, it's a case of, I still have plenty of faith in EFES. It's only 2 games in, but I think Valencia, this is a good boost to morale, really. And we saw what we expected from Valencia, really, in this game.
I think so. With Anadolu, though, I'm quite concerned. I'm still concerned about them because, honestly, when I saw the roster that they've built, I said, look, there are a few guys that can obviously shine, and we got what will be forever known as the McGreen battle of scorers in that game, with both Erick Green and obviously Erick and McCollum, and it was quite a show, I would say. But eventually, there can be only one winner, surprisingly enough. And eventually, I think that a better team won. EFES still have a lot of issues, and as you guys said at the beginning of the episode, it is just the second game. Luckily enough for them, their let's just say that their schedule is a bit more convenient than some other teams we will discuss later on. I would say yes, they have some reasons to be worried, but it's because I feel it's not just chemistry over there. But that's just me. Aris, what do you make of it?
First of all, I still believe, like you said, that Anadolu Efes is a much better team than the 2 first results suggest. I have fewer doubts than you, and I have to remind you that Ricky Lido was absent, and is a pretty important upset. And we have to send our condolences to Lido. After losing his father, he had to fly to the States. And with him, maybe that could have been a different game. And also, I like the idea that I was right about Erick Green and that he's really lighting up in EuroLeague. I expect Green in a team like Valencia, who is kind of built around him in the perimeter, to shine, and that's the case. I don't know what will happen if there is a team that can put really strong defensive pressure on Green and focus all the defense in getting him stopped. That will be interesting to see, and I believe that after the second week of action and with him playing that well, this will eventually happen. We will see defense collapsing on Green like in the past they did, let's say, against Panoulis.
So we're going to look ahead now to the games ahead, but obviously we like to go a bit deeper into individual player performances. We got a double round week, so it's a bit of an awkward spot here, folks. So what we're going to do is instead stuff like Erick Green's performance, stuff like what we're seeing from Doncic, and the stuff we're sort of seeing from the Norris Coles and Nicolases of this world. When we get to the sort of their games in the first round of this doubleheader week, we're not going to talk about those games as much as we're going to talk about those performances essentially. And it's a form of winging it, but it's a bit of fun. And hopefully that way we're giving the players their due, but we're also giving the games their due as well. The Tuesday night games, there's four of them. Khimki hosts Zvezda, Maccabi host Olympiacos in the battle of two Sweet 16 venues. Sadly, UCD Marion not looking likely to join EuroLeague anytime soon, so I don't think we'll be having a third Sweet 16 venue in EuroLeague in the near future. Real Madrid hosting Milano, and Barcelona hosting Zalgiris. I suppose, Moshe, just looking at sort of, we were talking about the individual performances, we got to really start off then with that Maccabi one that is on the board there. Maccabi hosting Olympiacos and Norris Cole. I think, how to put this, the likes of ourselves and the likes of the other English language speaking Euro basketball sort of analysis sites, we're all kind of going, why aren't we talking enough about Norris Cole before the season? I think after the last two games, people are starting to talk a bit more about Norris Cole.
Norris is he's very interesting. First of all, his character off the court is simply remarkable. He's like a person you would like to sit down and have a nice conversation with him. But aside that, let's just say that I think that, in a way he went under the radar for a lot of teams. It's like some team, there are some players that you kind of forget that they are there for no reason. I mean, there wasn't any reason to forget that Norris Cole was there. Now, Maccabi, at the beginning, they were planning to bring another wing player. It was supposed to be Jordan McRae, but, the deal kind of fell apart, so they ended up going for a change of conception, and now they have perhaps one of the deepest backcourts. I'm not going to say that it is the best, because obviously they are, they have to build themselves into becoming a great one-two punch, like a lot of teams have have had last season, and obviously still having them right now. Norris is obviously, from after seeing him playing versus Baskonia, the one thing you can say is, oh my God, he really lives up to his hashtag, which is cold-blooded 30. He did pretty much everything. He did whatever he wanted. Like I said, he right from the beginning, he gave you the impression that in terms of strength, he's probably one of the strongest guards in the EuroLeague. And boy, when he goes on a fast break, try and stop him. Because he's simply unstoppable.
And obviously it's Olympiacos are the ones having to take on Norris Cole and Maccabi on Tuesday. Like, what sort of challenges do you think a player like Cole brings to Olympiacos side with its current injury issues?
I believe that it will be a great matchup between Cole and Brian Roberts, and it will be interesting to see in the end who will prevail, because outside Roberts, I don't believe that anyone else, maybe with the exception of Giannis Strelnieks from the backcourt of Olympiacos, can really keep up with Norris Cole, because we already knew that Norris Cole is a good player. We kind of seen the real Norris Cole in the second game of Maccabi, and if they continue to be a 1-2 punch with Pierre Jackson, and if they can't get some kind of chemistry between them and play together on the court, I believe that many teams will have issues because of the speed of those two players. As we move on all around the basketball world, quickness and athletic abilities are becoming the most important thing in basketball. You can really beat athletic abilities, and the speed that this version of Maccabi can have is tremendous. I can't really remember any other team, even Maccabi Tel Aviv team, which is notoriously an up-tempo team throughout the whole years of their dominance. Even in the 80s, they liked to run even more than the Spanish team that also traditionally like to play in transition. I really don't remember in recent history a team that can have the combination of Pierre Jackson and Norris Cole.
It's quite an interesting pairing, and looking at interesting pairings this week, Real against Olimpia Milano or AX Milano or whatever version of Armani's clothes they're advertising these days. Milano, like I've been sort of saying at the start, are sort of, the league pass heroes so far of EuroLeague, but they also, there's a reason for that. They're a very good team for good players to look good against, and Luka Doncic, this is sort of a template game almost for him if you want to have sort of one of those ones who do a write-up on how he does things right, games at the end of the season. Like, coming into this one, he struggled as a shooter last week against CSKA. Like, wasn't a great offensive day for him, but he basically just found a way to be a serious contributor. Got the boards, got to the line, just found a way, even though it wasn't working from the field, to be a presence basically that did business for Real. I think against Milano, we're going to see a bit more of that smooth leader type game from Doncic, especially actually oddly because he's got to adapt to the absence of Kuzmic, because obviously that's a huge loss for Real going forward, no question. But you're looking at sort of Doncic, where he's getting these chances to be the dude who takes on sort of the big roles, and this is another chance. He's got to find another way to get the other fives in. There's no Randolph, who of course he has a fantastic on-floor relationship with, as well as off-floor. But contextually wise, I think the on-floor relationship is probably kind of more important here. So he's got to work with different pieces, and that's going to be fun. I think we're going to see how he manages in that, and it's going to be one of those games where either I would say we can pick apart the good bits at the end of the season, but it could also be one of the ones where you pick apart the bad bits at the end of the season as well, if the gel doesn't happen there. Before we look at the other two games briefly, Moshe, anything you want to say about sort of Doncic and this Milano game?
There are a lot of things I would like to say, but I'm going to start off with first Madrid's form. I mean, come on, they're coming without a single loss. Obviously, they're coming without an athletic big in the form of Randolph that could spread the floor, and as you said, was in very good terms on court with Doncic. I think that maybe Gudaitis is going to give them a few troubles, and he's going to draw a few good fouls. Also, by the way, a candidate for the Keith Langford Award. But, it's got Madrid's name written all over it, because Madrid were a team that are a team that can that are capable of playing at both ends of the court. And the question is, who's gonna step up for the absence of Randolph? Because Randolph would, he could give minutes both to the 4 and the 5 position. The thing is, I really don't know what's going on with Trey Tompkins, because he obviously can somewhat contribute as a stretch 4. And we're going to see a whole lot of Ayon, I'm guessing, in this game. I'm going with Madrid perhaps, but, I'm really worried for Milan, because if they're going to lose this one, then they have also Barcelona in the next game, which means you guys remember the teams that lost 4 in a row never made it. There was only one to make it to the playoffs, and that was Dachka last year. The rest of them never made it.
And absolutely. And brief talk about the other two games. You got Khimki against Zvezda. I actually do believe Khimki's going to win this game, rather than just saying it to keep Zvezda fans happy. We saw sort of Zvezda with their loss to Budućnost at the weekend, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but yeah, deal with it. They playing sort of this many games week in week out with so many of them at this high level. It's going to be tough for them to have sufficient rest, and a double game week beginning with a trip up there to not quite Moscow is going to be tough for them. Barca's Algiris, it'll be a good game. Not sure who's going to win. But typically this fixture, no matter where those two teams are at in the last couple of years, and heaven knows those two teams have been in very different places repeatedly the last couple of years, typically that fixture is pretty good. Wednesday, great lineup of games. CSKA against PAO, Fenerbahce against EFES, Baskonia against Valencia, Unicaja against Broza Bamberg. And so starting off, Aris with CSKA and Panathinaikos. Like, Kalathis, I think it's been an interesting start to the season for him. Just looking at him going against his CSKA side in Moscow, like, what are you making of his game so far this year?
Kalathis had a great Eurobasket tournament, and that kind of silenced all its critics. And it might come as a surprise to you, but many of Kalathis' critics are coming from Panathinaikos fans. They believe that the fact that Kalathis obviously is not the greatest shooter that there is in the basketball world, destroys everything else on his game. I disagree. The fact that Panathinaikos managed last season to finish in the top 4 of the EuroLeague is one more proof of how important a player like Kalathis is in this kind of team. Kalathis make things work for everyone else, and it will be really interesting to see him doing this against a team like CSKA Moscow. And one more thing, what's really underestimated on Kalathis is how good of a defensive player he is. If let's say Real Madrid provided a blueprint on how you can stop Sergio Rodriguez, Panathinaikos and Xavi Pascual can follow it, and they have Kalathis in order to make things happen on the defensive end of the court.
So, Moshe, obviously that's what we're seeing, from Aris, for Nick Kalathis ahead of CSKA. A man Aris has championed since the start of the season and is delivering so far is Erick Green. Him and Valencia travelling to Baskonia on a Wednesday evening. Baskonia obviously looking a bit battered and bruised even to start the season. Why is it, we didn't see none of us doubted Erick Green as being a good baller who's capable of scoring a lot. But, why is it the two of us didn't think this guy's an Alfonso Ford contender at the start of the season? Because, wow, we've really seen why, Aris is so bought in on Erick Green through 2 games.
I think it might have something to do with the Olympiacos system, the way that they were playing at times where he was playing with Spanoulis. Right now, I mean, he's the guy. We always said that like when Borussias was playing in Baskonia, that Giannis was the guy in Baskonia, and same thing we could have said for numerous players in numerous teams. And I think that right now in Valencia, obviously Erick Green is their go-to guy. He's the one to, create the spacing. He's the one that's going to take all the attention on the defensive end. And I think that's why, because obviously everyone knew the capabilities of Erick Green, but like I said, there are a lot of things that are going under the radar. Just like with Maccabi and Norris Cole. No one, everyone was surprised. And as I already said 2 episodes ago, like that signing did not get the hype that he should have had. With Green, again, I think it's rather similar, because whenever the first thing that came to mind was that Andrew Godlock is playing for Milan. And all of a sudden you go, wow, okay, that's a contender. And, I think it has a lot to do with it.
Absolutely. And just to round off those round 3 games, Fenerbahce hosting EFES, and I'm pretty confident of the unanimous view of the group here. Fenerbahce will be favourites to win, but both these sides, for very different reasons, need the W. EFES because they are 0-2. Fenerbahce because they just kind of need a spark, to get their act together, to get going. Unicaja hosting Broza Bamberg. Oof, this is a tough one for Bamberg. There's no getting around that. Unicaja showing that they know what they are very early. A couple of good performances to open the season, which are definitely defying at least one Dublin-based analyst's view of where they're going to be this season. And that's not going to be an easy game for Bamberg, is the easy way to get around it.
Well, I'll start off by saying about Fener Anadolu. Anadolu already beat them this year. It was in the Turkish league, obviously. I think that they're going to have a few issues with McCollum, but EuroLeague, usually when both teams have, that they really need the win, and Fener crushed today their opponents. I would say that Fener are coming in a better position than than Efes that are supposed to be playing tomorrow at the Turkish Basketball Super League. About Unicaja, yes, I'm going with Coach Plaza on this one. Aris, your thoughts on these two games?
Well, first of all, I think that no matter what you say about Valencia and Unicaja, they are kind of the dark horses of the EuroLeague because they are good teams. They are coming from a very, very strong league, the Spanish Liga Endesa, and they also have proven that they can cope with adversity. They had to fight their way to get in the EuroLeague, and that's why I believe that they will have this fighting mentality carried in the season with them. That's why on both cases I believe that they can turn many heads this week. First of all, Unicaja against Bamberg is a pretty decent favorite because let's face it, Bamberg is a good team, but they have lost a lot of firepower, and also the problems of Baskonia give a golden opportunity to Valencia in order to walk away with a big win, and I believe that such kind of an opportunity will not be missed by the Valencia crew.
Aris, I gotta ask you, obviously Valencia, they beat today Murcia not that long ago. But, obviously Baskonia are not, they haven't left a good impression during their games. They haven't won convincingly enough, but still they've got Beaubois back. And that is a whole lot of firepower that have averaged, I think, over 20 points, both in the games, in the last two games, which were Tel Aviv and this week, the ACB game. Do you think it's going to have any sort of effect coming to the game versus Valencia?
It's obvious that a player like Beaubois can help any team, but on the other hand, I think that Baskonia, let's say it that way, they have lost a lot of their Basque character during the summer, and having not a guy named Adam Hanga, who was the ultimate glue guy in the roster, is creating a host of issues that have to be ironed out throughout the season. And also I believe that Huertas needs some time in order to get his rhythm back from the NBA, because it's a different game, and also there are different needs that he has to fill at Baskonia compared to what he was doing during the last seasons with the Lakers. I'm not even sure at this point that Baskonia can be considered a team that will fight until the end for the playoffs. They probably will, but I really don't see them being one of the stronger contenders to get to the playoffs. And sometimes you can't pinpoint exactly to one person and to one characteristic. The team at this point really doesn't click. They need something. What this is, I'm not the most capable person in order to say and find the solution. But when I see Baskonia, I see something missing at this point.
Okay, before we move on, our predictions for the round 3 games. Moshe, let's start with you. Your winners, your 8 winners basically from the round 3 games.
So I'm going with Khimki, not easily, but conveniently enough. Maccabi, I'm going with them, but depending on the display made by Printazis and Milutinov. But it's going to be a very close game, so it can go either way. Madrid are playing versus Unicaja, so I'm going with Madrid simply because it's a home game for them.
Well, versus Milano, but yes.
Yeah, well, the same. It's the same right now. Basically, they are in better form. Actually, the fact that they've beat Unicaja today plays against them. So I'm kind of, it's a tricky one. Barcelona, I'm going with them. CSKA, very, very tough game always. These two rivalries provided great games between them. I'm going advantage with CSKA simply for the firepower. Fener, basically I think I'm going all home games. You know what? Scratch that. Valencia beating Baskonia, and that's the only away game that will be won.
And I'm going to be entirely honest, I'm going with the exact same as you. So all home winners except for Valencia. I'm going with them for that win in round three. Aris, your round three predictions. Well, I suppose given the way we've gone, any away winners apart from Valencia, or even if it's going to be Valencia.
Yes, I totally agree with Emmet. Let's say that I'm a little bit more divided between Maccabi and Olympiacos, just because Olympiacos has proven so far to be quite resilient. Of course, without Spanoulis, it will not be easy at all, but Olympiacos still has a deep roster, and the fact that there is no Spanoulis, oddly, take away a lot of the pressure that the team feels, and this may help them in the long run, or at least in the game against Maccabi Tel Aviv.
And that leads us to the end of round three, which means we've just got round four to get through to finish up the show. But before we do, let's take a quick timeout.
And just before we take this timeout, we got to say that this timeout was brought to you by John DiBartolomeo.
Off the court, like I said, simple. I like to read, listen to podcasts, watch TV shows, watch movies, go to the beach. When I'm in the States, most of my free time I spend with my dogs because all my friends, have full-time jobs. Favorite book, one of the latest ones I've read is The One Thing, which my dad gave me, which I really enjoyed. Favorite podcast is NPR Up First. I listen to every day, so to get my news.
And now also Sweet 16, I'm assuming.
Sweet 16.
And now we lastly move on, of course, to the 8 games in round 4. They are the Thursday and Friday games of the week ahead. The Thursday games, Zvezda host Maccabi, Zalgiris host Real, Olympiacos host Khimki, and Milano host Barcelona. Pretty good balance of games here. There's nothing that's jumping out to me as the absolutely can't miss game, Moshe, but all 4 of these games, I mean, never mind calls, I think we're guaranteed at least 2 good games. I just can't tell you which 2, essentially. I think, would that be a fair assessment of those 4 matches?
From the 4 of the first day, I would go with, obviously, Zvezda Maccabi, because every game played in Serbia is amazing. Thanks to the fans. Shout out to the Zvezda fans. Please welcome us with love and gestures as soon as we land in Belgrade to the Final Four. Okay, guys, I got us covered. And obviously, Olympiacos versus Khimki. We're seeing a defensive-oriented team versus a team that can play on both ends of the court. Gotta love that one.
And like Aris, I think Khimki is going to be interesting because of the sort of the type of team Khimki brings to Piraeus in this one. They're getting results even though they aren't always pretty, which is very much Olympiacos basketball at times. Obviously a different style in some respects, but I think that could be a very interesting clash there, really, Olympiacos and Khimki.
This is going to be a great matchup because Coach Bartzokas returns at Piraeus to play against Olympiacos as the head coach of Khimki, and any return of Coach Bartzokas at Piraeus will be something to watch because it's not a secret that Coach Bartzokas is also a fan of Olympiacos, and if he hadn't lose that cup game by Panathinaikos, he may continue for years and years to come to be on the bench of the Reds. And also, we are speaking about two great teams. Thomas Robinson is probably the best import player this year in the EuroLeague, and he's already showing it. Of course, the game of Zvezda, when Zvezda plays at home, it's always a spectacle. Even though they are not using the compact arena, they are not using the big arena of Belgrade. And there are also 2 games that can be sneaky good. This is the games, those are the games between Milano and Fenerbahce, and between Efes and CSKA Moscow. Why I'm saying that? There's a pretty good chance that both teams will be still searching their first win. I don't see how Milano will beat Real at Madrid, and I'm not entirely sure that Anadolu Efes can beat Fenerbahce again on the road like they did for the Turkish league. So if both Milano and Anadolu Efes at this point are still at 0 in the wins column, they will have to do anything they can in order to get a home win.
I got to go with you on Milano Barcelona being a game that's worth watching purely because so far Milano have just been guaranteed entertainment, simply as, and Barcelona, in fairness to them, haven't been far off that. So that, and of course you hinted at the sort of the Friday slate there, so we'll just give the full slate for the Friday games there. EFSCSK, definitely one that's got interesting written all over it. Brose Bamberg hosting Baskonia in a game that I think both sides are going to be seeing as a chance to get their season going. Panathinaikos against Fenerbahce, just, always the Zok goes to Athens story that we've had so many times, but somehow still is. It's a big deal that Zok is going to Athens. And Valencia Unicaja in another clash of the Spanish sides. I suppose, Moshe, going on that EFSCSK game that Aris pointed at, it's got that little bit of this could be a very weird game.
Just before, guys, do note that possible amazing matchup of Gudaris versus Serafin. Just saying. EFSCSK, wow. Okay, where do we even begin? Because whenever CSKA are traveling to Istanbul, we're getting more than we've bargained for. I was like, it happened numerous times last year, obviously. True that FS still have they still have some chemistry issues, but so does CSKA. So it is an open game. Obviously, in terms of talent, CSKA should win. But as Ari said, if FS should know, this is already the 4th game day of the EuroLeague. No team wants to go 0-4 because this is the place that only one team, due to points difference in games, managed to make it to the playoffs. You do not want to get to that situation because that could be a season over already, written all over it. So, yikes. Honestly, this is the one to watch from, the list. Obviously, the Friday games are amazing. Each and every one of the 8 games are amazing.
It's a really balanced week, you're right. Like, there's no game that jumps out as being guaranteed to be weak, if you know what I mean. Like, there's only a couple which you kind of will be putting huge hopes on being strong, but like all of them, have the chance to at worst be sneaky good, which is a great sign really when you see a slate like that. Panathinaikos Fenerbahce, I'm gonna let Aris talk about that in a minute, but it is what it is as clashes go. But for me, the one that I'm really looking forward to on Friday, much as I'd love to say Brose Bamberg versus Baskonia, because damn, I love going to Bamberg, not just for the basketball, just for the city. It's so pretty. Valencia Unicaja is the game I'm really looking forward to on Friday, because if Valencia get the W there, them and Unicaja, obviously it's a rematch of last year's Euro Cup final as well. And I just think there's a lot of chances for that one being the good kind of stupid. And obviously Erick Green could have a heck of a game. But Aris, Panathinaikos, Fenerbahce, aside from the inevitable 1,000 think pieces we're going to see about Obradovic going to Athens, what should we actually be looking for in this game?
First of all, the fact that Obradovic is coming back to ACA is kind of a big deal, but this is not a first. So I believe that both Fenerbahce and Panathinaikos are kind of over this fact. Of course, Obradovic is still beloved at OAKA, but this doesn't change the context of the game. And considering also the fact that Fenerbahce is coming as the defending champs, this is going to be a real challenge for this version of Panathinaikos, because in theory this is Panathinaikos that wants to build on what has been achieved last season. This is a Panathinaikos that wants to beat the defending champs, who were also the team that kept Panathinaikos away from the Final Four. This is the year that Panathinaikos wants to return to the big dance. So I really believe that at this point the return of Obradovic is going to be kind of an afterthought on everyone's head. This is above anything else the chance for Panathinaikos to prove right away that something big is being built at Athens.
So that brings us to the end of round 4. So I suppose, Moshe, let's get your 8 picks for that one.
Okay, I just gotta say about Zach and OAKA, he brought the walls of the fortress down for himself, for the first time, especially in the playoffs. I don't know if Panathinaikos are as good as they were. They are most definitely not as connected as they were last season. It's going to take time. So it's a thought. I'll start off with saying I see Madrid winning in Kaunas. Obviously, it's going to be close, I think, for 3 quarters, perhaps, as it always happens. I would take Olympiacos at CEF. Barcelona beats Milan. That goes 0-4. I'll go with CSKA, simply because it's CSKA, and I'm not that that comfortable of going against them still right now at this particular moment, especially with how Anadolu are looking. Fener, I'm going with them, and yeah, I think that Unicaja, they have the advantage. Perhaps they have the advantage on their front court because obviously Valencia with Green, they have it in the backcourt. Just to make it interesting, I'm going with Unicaja on an away game, and Maccabi can maybe win in Belgrade. Yes, and obviously Baskonia will have their they'll perhaps have their first win on away game. So I would say, bottom line, besides Olympiacos, I'm going actually all away games on the second round.
Wow, that's pretty bold from Moshe. I'm disagreeing a lot with you actually on this one. I'm far more confident in UR Maccabi at Zvezda. I think the double round week's going to hurt Zvezda a lot more than it'll hurt Maccabi. So that's why I'm picking them. Zalgiris Real, it isn't, me thinking Saric is the second coming of Stock or anything like this, but I think that double round and for Real is going to hurt them with their current issue at 5. I'm going Zalgiris for the upset at home. Oli over Kimki, I'm with you, I'm going Oli. Milano, Barcelona, I think Milano finally gets its first W. Saying it here. Milano finally get a win at home against Barcelona. EFSCSK, I'm going CSKA. Bamberg, Baskonia, I'm going to go heart over head here because I want to see Bamberg get a win reasonably early in the season, so it's not a complete fail. And I know you went with Maccabi most. I just think it's going to be easier for you for Maccabi than you think. Getting on PAO and Fener. I'm going PAO, to be honest. I just think at home they're going to have too much for a Fener side that's still finding itself. And Valencia Unicaja, I'm going Valencia. So my lone road winners are Maccabi, I believe, and CSKA. I've only got 2 road winners as opposed to your 7. Aris, your picks for those 8 games.
This is going to be hard. This is going to be really hard because, as Moses said, there are many guests that can get the win. So let's go the other way around. I believe that Panathinaikos, Valencia, EFES, and maybe Zvezda have a really good chance to defend their home courts. Okay, put also Zalgiris in the mix because they have proven time after time that they can do it. But the fact that there are so many teams ready to get the road win proves once more how strong this version of the EuroLeague is. And the fact that those are the second games of the back-to-back week provide some extra factors that we may not know at this point. An injury, a bad defeat, a bad flight when you have to travel. So it will be more than interesting, and yes, I really see many road game of the week.
Or a bad bus, because that joke will never get old. And that brings us to the end, really, of the show. And I suppose, Aris, just for people who are trying to find you in your many places, tell them where they can find you and all that.
at Eurohoops.net, and if you are misfortunate enough to watch Greek television, you can also see me at Cosmote TV.
And of course, you can find me always ballineurope.com, at BIE_basketball on Twitter. YouTube is our channel is of course Ball in Europe. And one thing I can guarantee for next Friday's games, I will be violently battling a hangover because Thursday is one of the bigger nights in the tech business community in Ireland, and that means I'll be in a black tie sort of tux job around people who are far wealthier than me, getting drunk at their expense. God bless capitalism, I suppose. Moshe, where can people find you?
And as always, you can find me at I Am Team Scout and at MosesB1 on Twitter, our Facebook page, Team Scout, and on the website itself, teamscout.net. And as you can see, sometimes I just like to stir things up, as I did with my fourth EuroLeague game day selections. Let's see how it all goes. I've been feeling myself some lucky as of recent, and yes, I'm not going to, just take it as you wish. And yes, till next time.